My name's Kyle Mal. Thanks for tuning into the channel today. I have the two founders of Creatively Disruptive here, and they're going to be talking about their hiring experience with us over the last couple of years. So I think, Andy, you originally responded to a cold email, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was 2 years ago.
Yes,
It's been a
yeah.
while.
Cold email does work.
It
So
does sometimes.
I saw your email, and as sometimes I do, I'll check through it and look at it and looked into it a little bit more, and it made a lot of sense to me. And yeah, we reached out to you, and you were very quick in responding. We told you what we kind of needed, and at the time, I think we needed a few pieces of places placed. We needed like uh, a Facebook ad manager, a social media manager, and I think an email marketing
Hmm.
person. I don't think we needed the Google ads person, but we needed those positions. And I think within probably about a week, I think we actually had all those positions filled. Like not just we just reached out to you, but within a week we actually had those positions filled with pretty good people
Hmm.
that worked with us for quite some time. And then when they moved on to greener pastures, you replaced them for us pretty quickly. Again, one of the things I was pleasantly surprised by was the speed with which.
Not only with the
Yeah, go ahead.
speed, it's the yeah, it because it's easy to find people quickly, but it's not easy to find good people quickly.
Hmm.
So, and that's obviously key. And when you're doing your own recruiting, you can find good people, but you can't find them quickly. Um, so that was a big piece for us is being able to have a partner who understood what we needed. Um, at quite a detailed level so that we didn't have to go through a big screening process. And I think that
Hmm.
was a real big bonus for us was just removing that screening process, that initial screening process, and giving us half a dozen good candidates, for example, that really fit the bill. Um, and sometimes the biggest problem is trying to decide which one of those candidates we want to take on because they're all good. But that screening process is something that, as any employer knows, is a huge time sucker.
Hmm.
And so being able to get rid of that is great. But yeah, as I said, that speed to finding somebody, but actually finding the right people as well. Um,
Yeah.
and providing us with just enough variation in candidates, and being able to be open to say to us, hey, this person isn't exactly what you're looking for in all areas, but we're going to put them forward because they're great. In fact, I think one of our hires was one of those people who turned out to be really good.
Hmm.
In fact, I think that person is still with us today. So,
Awesome. Love to
Yeah, and
hear
I,
that.
I and I'm going to just throw this in because I think it's important and it's something to appreciate is, hiring, not always is 100% perfect. Even a professional hire like you and your team, sometimes it's not quite the right fit and isn't the right person. I think the benefit that I see of using HireUA is how quickly, if we find out that it's not the right fit, you basically switch them out and get us the right fit. Which, if you make the wrong fit when you're actually hiring people, it can be quite difficult to unwind that. Will take a
Hmm.
little bit of time to unwind that.
mm,
So, you know, I think the fact that there's a good chance of getting the right person with HireUA, but also if in the event
We're
that
not perfect. Yeah.
isn't the right person, you can quickly fix it,
Hmm.
which doesn't always happen when you're hiring, directly.
Hmm. Where were you guys hiring before? Because just so for some context, you're both from New Zealand and Andy lives in the States and your team's kind of just all over the place. I think you have 20 something. Like where
mhm.
generally is your team composed of and where were you hiring before like coming to us?
Yeah,
Okay.
generally we were doing the hiring ourselves, and it was majority from the United States,
Okay.
which is somewhat difficult. We had a couple of people that still are the same people that are in New Zealand, that work with us. But I would say 90% of the staff was in the United States.
Okay.
And you have the United States issue that, I mean, the quality of the people are, as good as anything that I think you would probably bring us. I mean, we had good quality people, but you're paying 2-3 times as much for them. And when you do a mistake, instead of it costing a few $100s to fix the mistake, it can sometimes cost a few $1,000s to fix the mistake, which, and from a scaling standpoint, when you're scaling and you're hiring a good number of people, mistakes become super, super costly. One of the things I've always appreciated about you, Kyle, is you kind of limit the exposure that we've ever had to errors or mistakes or poor hires. One, from the point of view that your team is pretty good at screening and finding good people, so there's less bad people that we meet. I think the way you set up with the multiple interviews in pretty quick succession really gives us a really good sense of finding the one that fits best for us. And then in the unlikelihood that something isn't quite right, or maybe we end up hiring someone that didn't quite work out, you guys are really good at switching that, rectifying that really quickly and cost effectively, which from a business standpoint, from a scaling standpoint, and growing is great.
Awesome to hear that. Appreciate it. Do you have any idea, like, as far as like monthly costs? I think at your peak you had 5 or 6 people. Do you have any idea, just maybe on a monthly basis or annual basis, what that was as opposed to, hiring in the States as far as savings?
Yeah, I think that at the peak with you, we were probably spending about 12,000 a month,
Mm-hmm.
with about 5 full-time employees.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds right.
Those same employees likely would have been costing us, probably in the realm of, $25 to $30,000,
Mm-hmm.
right? Maybe on the very low end, if I look at the lowest paid position, on the and I times that by 5, it might have been $20,000. So we were saving. Forget about the convenience and the kind of like the guarantee that there will be a good person that we end up with. Saving, between, at minimum saving probably 40 to 50% on the salary. That would be at minimum, sometimes much higher than that.
Yeah, I think so that's about 12,000 a month. That's almost close to 150 a year right there. So that's
Right.
awesome to hear. What was it just like working with them day to day? I actually know a couple of your candidates pretty well because they did a case study with me like a year or so ago, but I'd be really honored if you'd share just kind of the day to day working with them. I know they kind of had their own little unit. They spoke a lot in their own language. Could you maybe just speak a little bit about that and how that went?
Yeah, that's probably more my area. Yeah, look, it was actually a lot easier than we thought. One of the uh, initial concerns I had was what would be the impacts of any language barriers, um, between people being hired through HireUA and our team, um, even with people that are able to speak English. Like, is there a language barrier, and how to even like the nuances of English, because English is a horrible language at the best of times for somebody who's non-native. Um, but I think the quality of both the spoken and written English was generally very good. Um, Obviously, we have some really good AI services now that can do live translation, but even back then we were using, sometimes we might have to use a little bit of translate. Well, not us, but some of the people that were working with us might use a little bit of translate to, um, but overall, overall from a communication standpoint, they were able to get onto like one-on-one meetings and team meetings with the team, and able to hold their own, able to take communication and understand it and implement it, and also be able to communicate to the team effectively so that the team was able to understand. So that while some of them weren't native English speaking, well, none of them were native English speaking, but and some had higher levels of fluency than others. It really didn't impact us from a day-to-day operational side of things.
And how about just like as, the general marketing skills, ability, graphics, creative side? How was that?
Really, again, really no different than hiring anybody else that's experienced in those areas. We've got somebody that's a Google Ads specialist who does as good a job as anybody else that knows how to do Google Ads. It's not like they learn a different form of Google Ads or graphic design or meta ads or, that there's different ways to be a media buyer than there is in the States or other, or the UK. It's the same thing. It's the quality of the work of the person, in my experience, has not been influenced by the country in which they live and or learn. Now, there's probably exceptions to that, but nothing that we've experienced. If you're a good media buyer, if you're a good graphic designer, then you're a good media buyer and you're a good graphic designer. The difference comes in whether or not you can adapt to the needs of the client, not being able to adapt from the needs of working with an agency in a different country.
Makes sense. Last thing, would you guys recommend marketing agencies like Creatively Disruptive work with us? And if so, like what would be the top
100%.
reason?
Yeah, I mean, Andy will have his own ones, but for me, 100%. When you rely so heavily from a day-to-day perspective, especially when you're in that sort of growing stage and you don't have a lot of redundancy in positions, and you have a media buyer that leaves, and sometimes they leave pretty quickly because they don't see the need to give, like, oh, I'm going to give you 4 weeks notice and give you plenty of time to swap out another media buyer and have a really decent handoff. That's challenging, right? And the smaller the agency, the harder it becomes, because more often than not, it'll actually fall back to the owner or to another media buyer, and suddenly their workload doubles. So that ability to be able to take off your plate the hiring process, right from creating the ad, like creating an ad and screening and all of that sort of thing, and just do the interview of good candidates so that you can actually replace somebody within a week or less, potentially, depending on the type of position, is key. We would have been, it would have just been so much harder for us, really would have been.
Yeah. And I think, from a financial standpoint, again, the number of times that we used your team, Kyle, was in a situation where we really needed somebody and we needed to replace somebody, or we needed somebody quickly. My experience in hiring, which I've done a lot of, is in those situations, oftentimes that's when you do make mistakes. That's where there is a likelihood that you do hire the wrong person because you're just trying to find a body to fill a seat, and you're desperate. What I think I really appreciate about you and your team, and why we'll continue using you, to fill these positions, is that, one, we can do it quickly, as Russell said, and when you're smaller, you need to fill it that much faster. Two, it's actually probably going to be the right hire. It's going to be fast, but it's actually going to be probably a good hire. And if it's not, equally quickly to fix the wrong hire, which does happen, right? I'm not going to, no one can pretend that every hire is perfect. But what I would say about you, which makes you so attractive, I think, from a financial standpoint, is how quickly the fix is made in a really good way. And that can save thousands. Like, usually the biggest cost to most businesses is going to be poor hiring. You kind of take that risk away, and then add to that the actual, just the monthly day-to-day cost is lower, substantially lower than if you were hiring in the United States or the UK or wherever directly. You're going to save a lot on your monthly payroll bill by using HireUA.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys both for taking the time to do this. You guys are buying out your last couple of people, so it feels like goodbye in a way, but I know you'll be back.
Not
So
really.
it
Not
kind of
really.
has a somber meaning to it, but I really appreciate you taking the time to do this for me.
Yeah, it's not, but it just happens to be that we're like, may as well just buy these two because they seem like they're going to be here forever.
Uh,
And that was always our goal, Kyle, was to go
mhm.
through and, see if they stick. And then if they feel like the creatively disruptive bleeding people, then we'll make them creatively
Yeah.
disruptive bleeding people. Um, you know, previously we've had really good people, but they haven't always felt like they're going to stick around with us for a long period of time.
Mhm.
I think we almost did it a couple of times, but
We
then
were
it
about to
just,
buy 5 of them at one point, and then
yeah,
like 2 of them moved countries and got a new job, and it just was like,
one of them kind
how did
of
this
started to
happen?
fall, one of them started to fall apart at the seams just at that point. So, hey,
Yeah.
it was always our goal, but I think we'll be back in touch at some point
Oh
to
yeah,
Okay.
definitely. I mean,
add
we haven't
talent.
actually just so you know, we haven't actually had to hire anybody for quite some time. So like when Polina left, we didn't actually replace Polina.
Mhm.
We actually split her position up and gave one person a few more hours, and so from my perspective, if we need to hire somebody, we're probably going to come back to you because honestly, that it makes sense. And it might not be your perfect model because you'd probably like to have somebody for life, but that's fine.
Well, buyouts are
But for us,
totally good. Anytime you guys want to do those, by all
exactly.
means.
But for us, it makes sense, to be able to have, to get you to hire somebody, and
Mhm.
and then if they don't work out, that's your problem to unwind, and it doesn't impact us, which
Yeah.
is, like, that's the harsh truth, because it does make it easy, because if we do find, and it just saves us so much time and so much headache, and it's just something that we don't have to really
Worry
think
about.
to
Mhm.
worry about too much. And then if they're with us for, 6 months or a year or whatever, and we go like, this is a creatively disruptive person, then yeah. And I think it's good for them too, like they love being bought.
Yeah.
But
It's funny because both of them were like so excited about it. It was almost like I'm sure they felt like it was a feather in their cap, and they were very,
yeah,
pleased and very excited. I'm sure it wasn't because they were horribly treated by you. My hope is that they were very excited about, the fact that we wanted them to be like
Full
wholly
team. Yeah.
our team. So no, we'll continue using you because we will be hiring other people, and it's kind of like you're like a little safety guarantee insurance net to make
yeah,
sure we get the right people.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for taking time to do this. I really appreciate it. And looking forward to
you're
talking to you in the
welcome.
future. Yep.